I wasn't invited to my sister's wedding. Then footage of the groom spitting on my mom went viral. You're so awkward that everyone feels uncomfortable. Don't come to the wedding. My own mother's words. 3 days later, footage of my sister's groom spitting on my mother went viral with 20 million views. You won't believe what happened next. But before we continue, please subscribe and hit that notification bell. This story gets absolutely wild. My name is Harper Bennett, and I'm 27 years old. For most of my life, I've been the family disappointment, the daughter who never quite measured up to my younger sister Riley's sparkling presence. While Riley glided through life collecting achievements and admirers, I stumbled through mine with social anxiety and a tendency to say the wrong thing at the wrong time. The phone call from my mother came 3 days before Riley's wedding. Her voice had that particular tone she reserved just for me. Part exasperation, part embarrassment. We've discussed it as a family, she said, her words clipped and cold. Riley's concerned about the impression you'll make. You know how you get at social events, Harper. The stammering, the awkward silences. Brandon's family is very particular about appearances, and this day needs to be perfect. Brandon, Riley's fiancé, a real estate developer whose family owned half the waterfront properties in Seattle. The wedding would be a lavish affair at a historic estate. 200 guests dressed in designer clothes. Champagne that cost more than my monthly rent. I had wanted to argue, to defend myself, to point out that I was her daughter too. But the words caught in my throat the way they always did when I tried to stand up to her. Instead, I whispered I understand and ended the call before the tears started. I sat cross-legged on my living room floor in Portland, Oregon, surrounded by travel brochures. The morning light filtered through the curtains, casting warm patterns on the hardwood floors of my apartment. I should have been preparing for my sister's wedding. Instead, I was planning an escape to Paris. My best friend Maya had found me crying in my cubicle at the insurance company, where we both worked as claims adjusters. She listened to the whole story while rubbing circles on my back, her face growing more indignant with each detail. That's absolutely cruel, she said firmly. You're her sister. You should be there. Maybe they're right, I murmured, wiping my eyes. I am awkward. I do make people uncomfortable. Stop that right now. Maya gripped my shoulders, forcing me to meet her eyes. You're thoughtful and kind. Just because you're not loud and flashy like Riley doesn't mean you're less worthy. But Maya's words couldn't erase a lifetime of feeling like I didn't belong in my own family. My father, a successful surgeon, had always been distant, more interested in his golf handicap than his daughter's. My mother, obsessed with status and appearances, had poured all her attention into Riley, the daughter who reflected well on her. And Riley herself had learned early that pushing me aside earned her more spotlight. So instead of fighting for my place at a wedding where I wasn't wanted, I made a different choice. I booked a flight to Paris, departing the morning of Riley's wedding. I would spend the day wandering through the Louvre, eating croissants at sidewalk cafes and pretending I was someone else. Someone confident and free. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Riley wants to make sure you're not planning to show up uninvited. Please confirm. I typed back. I'll be out of the country. Have a beautiful day. There was no response. No attempt to convince me otherwise. No last-minute change of heart. Just silence, which told me everything I needed to know. I purchased my plane ticket that evening, watching my savings account dwindle as I clicked the confirmation button. It was impulsive and expensive, but the idea of being an ocean away when my sister married into wealth and status felt necessary for my survival. I couldn't watch from the sidelines as my family celebrated without me, as they smiled for photos that would exclude me from their history. Maya helped me plan the trip, her enthusiasm gradually lifting my spirits. We mapped out museums, restaurants, and parks. She insisted I buy a new dress. Something beautiful that would make me feel special, even if I was alone. You deserve to have your own celebration, she said as we shopped. Who cares about some stuffy wedding? You'll be in Paris. The night before my flight, I packed carefully, folding the navy blue dress Maya had helped me choose, adding the worn paperback of a novel I had been meaning to read, including a small journal, thinking maybe I would document this trip. This act of choosing myself over their rejection. I texted Riley one last time. Have a beautiful wedding. I hope you and Brandon are very happy. She read it immediately but didn't respond. The next morning I woke before dawn. My flight was at 7. I made coffee in my small kitchen, looking around at my modest apartment. The life I had built on my own. The space where no one made me feel small. At the airport, I posted a single photo to social media. Just my boarding pass with the caption, "Sometimes the best way to celebrate is by celebrating yourself." Off to Paris. I turned off my phone as I boarded. Whatever happened at that wedding, I didn't want to know. I wanted to be free of it. Free of them. At least for a while. Paris was everything I needed it to be. The anonymity of being a stranger in a foreign city. The beauty of art and architecture that made my problems feel small. The joy of eating alone at cafes without judgment. I spent my first day at the Louvre losing myself in centuries of human creativity. I wandered the halls for hours, sitting in front of paintings that moved me. No one knew me here. No one expected anything from me. That evening I found a small bistro near my hotel. I ordered wine and coco au vin, pulling out my journal. I wrote about the paintings I had seen. The feeling of freedom. The strange lightness of being unburdened by family expectations. Somewhere in Seattle, Riley was getting married. Walking down an aisle I wasn't welcome to witness. Saying vows in front of guests who would never know I existed. I raised my wine glass to the empty seat across from me. To being forgotten, I whispered, "May it set me free." The next morning, I turned on my phone to check in with Maya. My screen exploded with notifications, missed calls, text messages, voicemails, all from numbers I had silenced. My heart raced as I opened the messages. The first was from Maya. "Harper, you need to see this. Call me immediately." The next was from a cousin I hadn't spoken to in years. "OMG. Is your family okay? I just saw the video." Video. What video? I opened. Social media and immediately understood. The top trending topic was #Bennett wedding disaster, and there with 20 million views and climbing was a video from Riley's wedding. My hands shook as I pressed play. The footage was shaky, clearly filmed on someone's phone. It showed the outdoor reception area, beautiful white tents, elegant decorations, well-dressed guests milling about. Then the camera focused on my mother who was speaking to Brandon near the bar. She looked elegant in her mother of the bride dress. Her face was animated as she gestured. I couldn't hear what she was saying, but I could see Brandon's expression change. His jaw tightened, his eyes narrowed. Then he did something that made my stomach drop. He leaned forward and spit directly in my mother's face. The video captured it in horrifying detail. The shock on my mother's face. The gasps from nearby guests. Riley appearing in the frame, her wedding dress swirling as she rushed over. But instead of confronting Brandon, she grabbed my mother's arm, pulled her away, as if my mother was the problem. The video ended there, but the comments section was on fire. Did he just spit on the mother of the bride? At his own wedding? What kind of monster does that? That poor woman. Why isn't anyone helping her? Someone needs to identify this man. This is assault. I watched the video again, then again. Each time my shock deepened into something else, something harder. My mother had told me I was too awkward for this wedding, too embarrassing, too much of a liability. But she had married Riley off to a man who would spit in her face, in front of 200 witnesses, on her daughter's wedding day. My phone rang. My mother's number. I stared at it for a long moment before answering. Harper? She said, her voice thick with tears. Where are you, Paris? I said calmly, like I told you I would be. You need to come home. We need you. Riley needs you. I let the silence stretch between us. The wedding you told me not to attend? I asked. The one where I would be too awkward, too embarrassing. That wedding? She started crying harder. Please. I know what I said. I know it was wrong. But Harper? Everything is falling apart. What happened after the video ended, I asked. She took a shaky breath. Brandon's family released a statement. They're horrified. They've cut him off completely. The wedding was called off. Most of the guests left. Riley is devastated. And the video is everywhere. Everyone is saying terrible things. About Brandon, I asked. About all of us. About how we let it happen. About how Riley stayed with him even after he did that. About how we're a family that values status over character. I closed my eyes. Are they wrong, Harper, please? I need to think, I said. I'll call you back. I hung up and sat on the edge of my hotel bed, staring at the Parisian street outside my window. Part of me wanted to feel vindicated. They had excluded me from their perfect day, and that perfect day had exploded spectacularly. The universe had delivered poetic justice. But another part of me, the part that was still their daughter and sister, despite everything, felt sick. My mother had been assaulted. Riley's wedding had been ruined. And I was an ocean away, safe from the fallout. Maya called. I said when I answered, What are you going to do? She asked gently. I don't know. They don't deserve your help, Harper. They told you not to come. I know, but you're going to help them anyway, aren't you? I think I might be, I admitted. That's because you're a better person than they are. Or a bigger fool. Maybe both, she said. But if you go back on your terms. Not as the forgotten daughter begging for scraps. As someone who chose to help despite how they treated you. You're right. I know I am. That's why you keep me around. I spent the rest of the day researching, reading every article about the incident, watching the video from multiple angles. Different guests had filmed it from different perspectives. Each one showed the same horrifying moment. But they also showed something else. Something that made my decision easier. After Brandon spit on my mother, several guests had tried to intervene. But Riley had stopped them, had insisted everything was fine, had begged people not to make a scene. She had chosen him over her own mother. In that moment, with witnesses watching, she had chosen to protect the man who had just assaulted her mother. And my parents had raised her to think that was acceptable. I booked a flight home for the next morning. But before I left Paris, I did one thing. I called a lawyer. The lawyer I contacted specialized in image management and crisis PR. I explained the situation, told her I was the sister who hadn't been invited to the wedding, asked her what my family should do. She listened carefully. Then she said something that surprised me. The public is on your mother's side right now, but that will change if your family doesn't handle this correctly. People are starting to ask why she accepted that treatment, why your sister didn't defend her, why no one stopped the wedding before it got that far. What should they do? I asked. Be honest, transparent. Your mother needs to speak out. She needs to explain that she's a victim, that she was as shocked as everyone else, that she's leaving the situation and taking her daughter with her. And if they don't, then the narrative will shift. They'll become the family that enabled an abuser, that cared more about money and status than character. And trust me, the internet never forgets. I thanked her and hung up. Then I called my mother back. I'm coming home, I said, but we need to talk, all of us, and you need to listen to everything I have to say. Anything, she whispered. Just please come home. The flight back was long. I spent it writing in my journal, organizing my thoughts, preparing for what I needed to say. Maya had texted me. Remember, you're not going back as the awkward daughter. You're going back as the only one who sees clearly. Don't let them make you small again. When I landed in Seattle, my father was waiting at baggage claim. He looked older than I remembered, tired, worn down. "Harper," he said, pulling me into an awkward hug. "Thank you for coming." We drove to my parents' house in silence. When we arrived, I saw my mother sitting in the living room. Her eyes were red from crying. Riley was curled up on the couch, still wearing sweatpants, her hair unbrushed. They both looked up when I entered. "Harper," my mother said, standing. "Sit," I said firmly. "All of you? We need to talk." They sat. I stood in front of them, no longer the awkward daughter who stammered and apologized. "3 days ago, I began. You told me I was too embarrassing to attend this wedding. Too awkward. Too much of a liability." My mother opened her mouth to speak. "I'm not finished." She closed it. "You told me that Brandon's family was particular about appearances, that everything needed to be perfect, that I would ruin Riley's special day." Riley looked down at her hands. "So I left. I went to Paris. I chose to celebrate myself instead of begging for a place at a table where I wasn't wanted." Tears rolled down my mother's cheeks. "And while I was gone, the perfect wedding you prioritized over your own daughter imploded. Because you were so focused on appearances that you married Riley off to a man who would spit in your face." The room was silent. "That video has 20 million views. 20 million people watched your son-in-law assault you. And you know what they're saying now? They're asking why you accepted it. Why Riley defended him. Why our family values money and status over basic human dignity." "Is that why you came back?" Riley asked quietly. "To tell us?" "I told you so. I came back because you're still my family. And because, unlike you, I don't abandon people when things get hard. But I didn't come back to be your scapegoat or your punching bag. I came back to tell you the truth." "What truth?" my father asked. "That you created this. All of you?" My mother gasped. "You taught Riley that appearance matters more than character. You taught her to prioritize status over self-respect. You taught her that being pretty and popular was more important than being kind or genuine. And you taught me that I was less valuable because I didn't fit your image of perfection." "That's not fair," my mother protested. "Isn't it? You uninvited your own daughter from a wedding because you were embarrassed by her. What message does that send?" "I never meant to hurt you," she whispered, "but you did. And you know what? Brandon probably never meant to spit on you either, but he did. Because when you build relationships on status instead of substance, eventually the facade cracks." "So what do we do now?" Riley asked, her voice small. "You make a choice. You can either keep pretending everything is fine and watch your reputation crumble, or you can be honest. Mom needs to give a statement. She needs to say she's a victim of Brandon's abuse, that she was shocked and horrified, that she's leaving this situation, and Riley needs to support her, not defend him." Riley looked up. "But Brandon's family, their money, everything we planned, is worth less than nothing if it costs you your soul." The silence stretched between us. "I talked to a crisis management lawyer," I continued. "She's willing to help, but only if you're willing to be honest, to admit that you prioritize the wrong things, to show the public that you're more than a family that tolerates abuse." My mother stood slowly. "I'll do it. Whatever you think is right. I'll do it." "Riley," I asked. She looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. "I'm so sorry, Harper, for everything, for how we treated you, for making you feel less than. You were right about Brandon. You were right about all of it." I nodded. "Then let's fix this." Over the next week, I became the unexpected coordinator of my family's redemption. My mother gave a powerful interview to a major news outlet. She spoke about being a victim of Brandon's aggression, how she had been so focused on the wedding's success that she hadn't seen the warning signs, how her daughter had tried to defend him instead of her. She cried on camera. Not performative tears, but real ones. The tears of a woman confronting her own mistakes. Riley gave her own interview. She admitted she had been blinded by Brandon's wealth and status, that she had ignored red flags because she wanted the fairy tale, that she had failed to protect her mother in that moment, that she was ashamed of her choices. But then Riley did something that surprised me. She talked about me. My sister Harper wasn't at the wedding, she said to the camera. Not because she didn't want to be there, but because we told her she wasn't good enough. We told her she was too awkward, too embarrassing, that she would ruin my perfect day. And you know what? She was the only one who saw clearly. She was the only one who understood that character matters more than appearances. And when everything fell apart, she came back to help us anyway, even though we didn't deserve it. The interviewer leaned forward. What do you want to say to your sister now? Riley looked directly at the camera, tears streaming down her face. Harper, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for every time I made you feel less than, for every time I got attention while you were ignored, for treating you like you didn't matter. You're the strongest person I know, and I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to earn it. When the interviews aired, public opinion shifted. Instead of a family that enabled abuse, we became a story of reckoning and growth. Messages poured in from people who understood, who had made similar mistakes, who had chosen status over substance and paid the price. But the message that mattered most came from Maya. You did it. You saved them. But more importantly, you showed them who you really are. Brandon, meanwhile, faced the consequences of his actions. The video had destroyed his reputation beyond repair. His family's public statement condemning his behavior had been scathing. Other women came forward, ex-girlfriends who shared stories of his verbal abuse, his controlling behavior, his sense of entitlement. He lost his position at his family's company, lost access to their wealth, became a cautionary tale about entitled men who think charm and money excuse cruelty. The last I heard, he was living in a small apartment in Arizona, working a regular job for the first time in his life. Humbled and alone. My mother committed to therapy. Not just for show, but real work, examining how her obsession with status had damaged her daughters. My father started having weekly coffee dates with me. Awkward at first, but gradually more genuine. He admitted he had been absent, that he had let my mother's priorities become the family's priorities, that he was sorry. And Riley and I began rebuilding our relationship. It wasn't easy. Years of hurt don't disappear overnight, but we were trying, really trying. 3 months after the wedding that I wasn't invited to, I stood in front of a room of 12 women. This was the third meeting of the support group I had started, a space for women dealing with family rejection, favoritism, and the unique pain of feeling invisible to the people who should love them most. Thank you all for coming, I said, taking my seat at the head of the table. The responses varied. Some women were making progress with their families. Others had decided to step back and create distance. One woman shared that she had confronted her parents about years of favoring her brother. It's like I finally gave myself permission to acknowledge the hurt, she said. And that acknowledgement was its own kind of healing. I nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. 6 months after the viral video, I received an invitation, not to a wedding, but to a family dinner, a real one, where I was genuinely wanted. I arrived at my parents' house wearing jeans and a sweater, no fancy dress, no pretense, just me. My mother hugged me at the door, not the stiff performative hug of before, but a real embrace. Thank you for coming, she said. Thank you for inviting me, I replied. For real this time. Riley was in the kitchen cooking, something she had never done before. She looked up when I entered and smiled, a genuine smile. I'm making your favorite, she said, garlic chicken. You remember my favorite I'm learning? She said quietly. I'm learning a lot of things I should have known all along. That evening, as we sat around the table, my mother raised her glass. To Harper, She said, her voice thick with emotion. For saving us when we didn't deserve it. To Harper, the others echoed. I raised my own glass. To second chances, I said, and to doing better. We clinked glasses, and for the first time in my memory, I felt like I actually belonged at this table. Later, Riley and I sat on the back porch, drinking tea and watching the sunset. Do you think you'll ever fully forgive us? She asked softly. I think forgiveness is a process, not a destination. I'm working on it. Some days are easier than others. That's fair? She paused. I'm working on forgiving myself too, for being so shallow, so complicit in how you were treated. We were both products of how we were raised. You were rewarded for certain behaviors, and I was punished for being myself. We're both unlearning those patterns now. When did you get so wise? She laughed. I smiled. When I was sitting alone in Paris watching our family's perfect day fall apart and realized I had a choice. I could stay bitter and let the pain define me, or I could use it to become someone stronger. I chose the second option. I'm glad you did. I'm glad you came back. Me too. The truth is I learned something important from that whole experience. That revenge doesn't have to be about destruction. Sometimes the best revenge is refusing to let someone's low opinion of you become your reality. Sometimes it's taking the pain they caused and transforming it into purpose. Sometimes it's standing up and saying I deserved better, and I'm going to demand it from now on. I had spent 27 years trying to make myself smaller to fit into my family's narrative. Now I was done shrinking, done apologizing for taking up space, done being the forgettable daughter. The wedding that I wasn't invited to had become the catalyst for everything that came after. The viral video, the public humiliation, the exposure of Brandon's true nature. It had all cracked open the perfect facade my family had maintained for so long. And in the wreckage, we had found a chance to build something more honest. Brandon faced consequences both public and private. His name was forever linked to that moment of spitting on my mother, a permanent stain on his character that no amount of damage control could erase. My mother had faced her own reckoning. Her social media had been flooded with criticism after Riley's interview, forcing her to confront how her behavior appeared to others. Several of her friends had distanced themselves. She had cried many nights, mourning the reputation she had spent decades building. But in losing that false image, she had gained something more valuable. Real relationships with her daughters, built on honesty rather than pretense. As for me, I learned that sometimes you have to leave to be seen. Sometimes you have to say no to be respected. Sometimes you have to choose yourself before anyone else will choose you. I had gone to Paris as the forgotten daughter. I had come back as the woman who saved her family from their own mistakes, from invisible to undeniable, from running away to standing my ground. And that was the sweetest victory of all. Not that their perfect day had fallen apart, but that I had finally become visible, finally took up space, finally demanded the respect I had always deserved. I'm Harper Bennett, and I'm no longer anyone's afterthought. I'm the woman who chose herself, who set boundaries, who refused to shrink. And if you're the forgotten daughter in your family, if you're the one who's told you're too awkward, too sensitive, too much, or not enough, I want you to know something. You are not the problem. Your value doesn't depend on someone else recognizing it. Stand up. Speak out. Take up space. You deserve to be here. And sometimes the best thing you can do is choose yourself first. Even if it means missing the wedding, even if it means being an ocean away when everything falls apart, even if it means coming back on your own terms, because you are worth more than their limited view of you. You always have been. And the moment you believe that really believe it, everything changes.